Hello there, and welcome to the second part of Module 2 of Professional Ethics.
So as you can see, this time around we are covering the topic of theories about right action or theories of right action in professional ethics. So what is theories in right action? Well, essentially it's about how we go ahead and take the right action and what are the ethics behind it. Basically, what should we think about before we take an action, and what are the consequences of our action, which is what we'll be dealing with in this topic. So the theories and right actions are divided into two categories. One is the consequentialist theories and the other is the non-consequentialist theories. Now from the name itself you can kind of realize that consequentialist theories is based on the consequences of the action taken. That is, what happens after the action is what we generally care about, and therefore that will determine on what action we should take. As opposed to that, non-consequentialist theories is not having anything to do about the consequence at all. We don't care about what happens after we take the decision or after we take the right action. All we care about is what are our values, what is important to us, and therefore how that will shape our decision and therefore our action. So consequentialist theories can be divided into three types. One is ethical egoism, then we have ethical altruism, and the third is ethical utilitarianism. Now, do not be frightened by these large words which are on your screen right now. Egoism is, as the word suggests, it's about you, your ego. It's essentially you take an action so that the consequence would benefit yourself. As in, you're being a bit selfish there, aren't you? Now, altruism, on the other hand, means basically for the benefit of all. You're taking an action not for your own selfish reason, but for the goodness of others. Therefore, in this case, you won't even consider yourself, but you'll be considering others' case. And the third one, utilitarianism, is a bit more gray as compared to the other two. It's neither for yourself nor for others. We are basically considering what action affects the most amount of people positively by our standards. But let's get more deeply into each of these now.
So, as mentioned in the previous slide, ethical egoism is when you act so that the consequences of your actions benefit you and only you. It is basically acting on self interest. So, it's basically acting so that it maximizes your own personal benefit and also thinking on the lines that you should be acting towards your self interest. Therefore, whatever you do that helps you or benefits you is good. Anything that does not benefit you should not be considered as something good or something that should be done by you.
Now, as opposed to egoism, you have ethical altruism, where you're basically taking an action so as for the benefit of others, forgetting entirely about what benefit or what negative effects it might have on you. So, if the ethical egoist theory is basically about supervillains, ethical altruism is about the superheroes which we see on screen, like your Superman, like your Spider-Man, etc. And of course, by this I mean like the ideal version of the superhero, not the more grayish superheroes which we see nowadays on screen, such as like your Iron Mans, etc., which we'll be covering in the next part of this. But essentially, ethical altruism is when you do not consider how the consequences might affect you. You only think about how the consequences will benefit other people. And finally, we have ethical utilitarianism. Now, the concept of utilitarianism is when you weigh the pros and cons to see what has the highest benefit. So, this is all your present day superhero movies where the superheroes are not all bright and shining and very positive. These are like more realistic. So, they would consider, given an option, they would consider which has the highest benefit. So, this could lead to the action affecting some people negatively, but if the overall consequences turn out to be good, maybe you might think that that's actually not that bad an idea. Now, the problem with this, of course, is that it brings into consideration things like how many people will you hurt for the benefit of how many more people? Is it okay to kill one person to save 10 people? And of course, killing, of course, is wrong. But then in the real world, it's not as simple as killing is wrong, right? There are more nuances, there's more subtlety to that. So those things which we'll be covering in the non-consequentialist theories. But as of now, ethical utilitarianism is when we consider whether our action affects the most amount of people positively. It might be negative for some people, but sometimes maybe it might be for the benefit of more people. Therefore, we'll consider that as a good thing.
Next, we have non-consequentialist theories. This is where you are not thinking about the consequences of your action. You are thinking about what decision you should make depending on whether it's right or wrong. You are not exactly worried about the consequences of your actions. In fact, it has originated in the Bhagavad Gita, which is later prevailed across Indian philosophy, that before taking a right decision, you must think about it multiple times. But once you take the decision, you must never look back even once. So, to kind of put that into this perspective, you are thinking what you should be doing based on what someone else has told you is the right thing to do, and based on what you think is the right thing to do. Which brings us down to duty ethics and virtue ethics. To explain this better, once again going back to the Mahabharata, namely the Bhagavad Gita, which is a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. So the scenario is that Krishna has taken Arjuna to the center of the battlefield to face the opposing army. And Arjuna, being the kind-hearted person he is, says that he is unable to bring himself to kill his relatives because he thinks killing his relatives, fighting his relatives is not the right thing to do. That is virtue ethics. That is when you think it's just wrong to fight your relatives or it's just wrong to kill. Now again, in this case, Krishna says it is your duty as a Kshatriya to fight. Krishna is not emphasizing on how many people will die or how people will die. He is explicitly mentioning about Arjuna's duty as a Kshatriya, as a warrior, to fight. What happens after and the consequences of his actions are not taken into consideration as of now. He should be worried about his duty as opposed to being worried about his own sense of values and morals.
Now, duty ethics has everything to do with, but of course, duty. But what are your duties? Duties are rules laid down by something external to yourself, as in you're not the ones who's setting down the rules, saying these are my duties. Someone else is setting that for you. So it could be your parents, it could be your teachers, it could be your military commander if you're in the armed forces. Those are your duties. They are set by something external from you. You are not the ones who said that. And therefore, you must take certain decisions or you must do certain things according to whatever duty comes onto you. Now, if duty ethics was external, obviously virtue ethics would be internal. Like the word itself says there, virtue means goodness of mind. It is entirely about taking the right decisions guided by your own conscience. That is to say, you're not doing the right thing because someone tells you this is the right thing to do. You're doing the right thing because you think that's the right thing to do. You're not thinking about the consequences of it. You're not thinking, oh, if I do this, I will gain this advantage, or if I do this, it will be good for other people. You just think that this is the right thing to do. I therefore should do this.